Yeah, so we proceed with synopsis. Of course, we see Baba Munge coming back home quite drunk. And in the process, he's cursing and all that. He's drunk Muratina from Gishohi's bar, and something he had made a habit or a custom. So when he comes home, of course, he's struggling even to move and he falls off before he gets to the house. His dog is very close to him, but he doesn't seem friendly to it. He doesn't care. You see, a pig's life, it's like you live a life where you don't care. Maybe others can care, but you don't. Okay. So we realized that he was a son of a World War II veteran. His father Njuguna had fought in war. So he had been interested to go fight the European or the British people because when his father went to fight in Burma, fight against the German people, he actually experienced a very traumatizing moment because he lost his leg. Okay, he lost his leg during that war, and once he lost the war in the leg in that war, what the British people did under the King's African Rifles in 1941. They simply released him from the military, calling him unfit, and they never paid any pension. So, on coming back home, he was a bitter man after fighting British in Asia, um, having come from Thika town. So he lived a life that was terrible, without a leg, without compensation, without a good life. He had 11 children and two wives. So, of course, he refused to join other veterans in claiming for compensation because he said he has known what colonizers are. Something I don't think was wise. Anyway, he lived this bitter life until now the colonialists came to Kenya to colonize Kenya. And they were sympathizing, because, of course, being a veteran and having experienced a bitter life, he was very sympathetic about the freedom fighters. So he was collected among other people and instructed the children to run away because he said, as an old person, he was not of importance. He called himself an ox that has grown old and doesn't have an admirer. So when his family ran away, he remained intact, and with the time, of course, they shot him into the trench, and that's how he lost his life under the watch of his son, Baba Munge. So Baba Munge now learns that the British are his enemies. So when they are fighting, he joins the freedom fighters in the forest at the age of 30, you know. And at that time, I believe he had possibly married, he had possibly married Mama Munge and had promised her a very good life. Had also told her that once the war is over, uh, he is going to acquire back their land and they'll till and be able to cultivate wheat and tea and live a rich life. So when he comes as a drunk man, he looks around, the wife is suffering, struggling, lighting a jiko, preparing food. So he looks at that and he's so much discontent. He has a lot of bitterness because he sees the wife is now, more of a servant when he thought they could have servants to serve them. Now, the wife, on the other hand, complains about this drunkardness habits of her husband, the fact that their pigs are not having enough food, the farm is not producing enough, but this man is wasting some little money on brew. Yeah, however, Baba Munge doesn't care. He says, so what? If the pigs die, what is the problem? Has he not seen people, human beings dying in the forest? So, of course, he comes about, he sits there watching the wife preparing ugali. There was some goat, small goat meat and soup, and skuma wiki. Now, on this day, of course, as they grew up, Chege and Lucy, they are now a bit of adults, and they don't understand the habits, or rather the indirect communication whereby the mother and father accuse each other indirectly. Now, we realize that at the end of the day, Shege has relocated to Nairobi and he regrets whenever he comes home and sees the state of affairs back at home. He doesn't want even to listen to these stories of war, colonialism, betrayal, heroism, and crutches because they have nothing to do with the current generation. Like, how will they improve the rural districts and all that? So that's the synopsis. Let's get to character and characterization. Of course, we begin with Baba Munge this time round because he seems to be dominant in this part of the chapter. Now, Baba Munge, I believe, is the one living a pig's life, though the pig's life has run from Njuguna the father to Shege. So we realize that Baba Munge is actually vulnerable. He is drunk all time. He goes to Gishoi's bar and takes Muratina, and he comes back home when he's drunk. He cannot even move. On page 8, we see that even at the gate, he thought that there was a pickpocket stalking him, but he had only an empty purse. Now we see that while he's there, he thinks of the long suffering, and while he wakes up and gets to a house, he's just murmuring to himself. He wants to be left alone. Okay, so we see some sort of vulnerability here. Then we also realize that he's very unforgiving. We understand now psychologically why this man is unforgiving even to Shege. He doesn't feel like he should forgive the British people or the whites for what they did to the family. He says he had every reason to blame the colonialists and now the black master. The blacks, because after colonialism ended, instead of bringing the benefits that they had promised them, because when they went to war, according to page 9, they had been promised that when Uhuru comes, they'll actually be rewarded. But years had gone by. He was now 60. He went to war at 30. And at this age, he had nothing to show of it, nothing. And so we see him saying that the black master has overtaken everything. His family was unrecognized and he could not show anything of it. So this bitterness eats into him and he looks at everything as betrayal, suffering, and he doesn't understand what to do. We see he's also regretful. He's regretful, especially on page 9. He really regrets that he went to the forest, and at the end of the day, when he came out, you know, that when he was courting the wife, he had promised that they would have very big land, they would cultivate tea and wheat, and now he had nothing to show of it. His time was running out, you know. So he regrets having gone to the forest and fought for the independence or freedom of Kenya, only to come back and live a poor life. We can say he's totally pessimistic, hopeless, and that is why we realize that he's drinking himself to a stupor. He staggers home while he's drunk, he even vomits, you know. His eyes are full of fear and suspicion. Yeah, he doesn't want even to relate with the dog on page 8. Um, on page 9, when the wife is complaining that they should take care of the crops, they should take care of the animals, he says he wants to be left alone. He wants to be left alone. And even if the pigs are unfed and the farm remains unwed or they have not weeded it, he cares less. So he says on page 10, do I have time to listen to the stories about pigs? Let the wretched things starve. We've seen grown men die fighting. What is a pig's life? You see? When you also check on page 11, you realize that he's so much dug into the past. We are fools who never learn. We threw the white man out, then we waited for our land to be returned to us. But now, who is going to throw the black monkey off our backs? My father hunted down the Japani and the Jeremani in Egypt and Burma. I, the son of Njuguna, took my fight to the forest. Where are the cubs who will inherit the spots of their leopard fathers? So he's so, disillusioned, so pessimistic, so hopeless that he doesn't see anything in this life. We see that I think he's coercive because here he's trying to make Shege and even Munge to go his way, yet he has not even benefited himself so far. All right. Now, unless I've left a character there, of course there might be because this is a long part. There might be something about maybe reflective, critical. He's a bit critical about the colonialists and what they did to him, and also the British and how they had handled the father's issue. Um, I can go to Mama Munge. We realize that Mama Munge is outspoken. When we check on page 10 and 9, we see that she's talking to her husband about the need to actually um, walk away from drunkenness and mind growth. That is page 9. We also see that she's a bit hopeful, but she's just challenged by life. Look at page 9. Jesus bless us. So, which means Jesus Christ bless us. I've never understood the need for this snuff that makes people sneeze. We suffer with little money the farm brings. To think how tired earth releases the crops like they are being wrenched from the uterus, like babies who change their minds halfway through the birth. So this part is actually offering us some sort of hope from Mama Munge. Mama Munge is also zealous, industrious, and hardworking. When you check on page 8, Baba Munge comes home, finds Mama Munge is preparing a meal, a goat's meat. Of course, she has had to look for it. We also see she's concerned about the land stealing, the feeding of the animals. Then when we move to page 10 and 11, we realize that Mama Munge is actually really focusing on the family growth. And the husband just watches her struggling around. Looking at Shege, Shege is actually development focused. As we check on page 12, whenever he came back home, he always thought of how they could take development to impoverished rural districts. Okay, he also hated the fact that the father kept focusing on crutches, heroism, and betrayal, which could not have an impact on generational aspect. So we can say he's also um, if distanced. When we talk about someone who has come out of their culture, they have moved out of their culture and they are kind of distancing themselves. Distance or elevated, is it? Hmm, let me. Yeah. So that one is Shage. I don't think there is another character here. Maybe we can talk about Njuguna, the veteran. Njuguna was brave. He was brave. He joined the King's African Rifles in 19 early 19 and while fighting for the white man, and he actually had to lose his leg, and he was never paid pension. We can also realize he's very scornful and hateful. He hated the British people totally after they betrayed him in Asia. When he came back broken and crippled, they never gave him any compensation. And therefore, he really hated everything about them. He was also hopeless. When you check on page 11, when the armed colonial forces came to the village in their starched khaki uniforms, he refused to be served and waited to see the ancestors, to go to the ancestors. He even told the sons to go away so that if they decide to kill him, well and good. And indeed they did so. Hmm. Yeah, now let's get to thematic concerns. The first thematic concern we see, particularly on page 8. On page 8, we see alcoholism or drug abuse. Baba Munga is actually drinking himself to a stupor. He wakes up in the morning, he goes to Gishoi's bar, he takes Muratina, and comes back home while he's staggering. He even falls by the gates, and he has an empty wallet. He goes to the house, and he doesn't have anything to do but just to look around, stare as a drunkard. So we see drug abuse right there. And all through, the impact is shown in the entire chapter because he's talking to himself, quarreling, despairing. The next thematic concern we can talk about is poverty. Actually, Njuguna, the father, and Baba Munge actually have led a pig's life, a poor life where you can see even on page 8, he has an empty wallet. Then the wife complains on page 9 that their crops are not doing very well and their pigs do not have food. Yeah. Now, when you look at the complaint on page 912, we see the author trying to show us that they are using a charcoal jiko. The promises he had made to the wife are unfulfilled. So they have not acquired land as big as they wanted, and they are not doing big farming. When you look also on page 11, you realize there is poverty there because um, as they come to pick to kill Njuguna, actually he was living a desperate life. Page 12 also, Shege is telling us we have impoverished rural districts, a suggestion of poverty. The other theme we have is colonial brutality and fight for independence. Of course, it has come out clearly on page 8 and 9. Shege actually, not Shege, Baba Munge joined the people went to the forest to fight for independence because the colonial masters were here. They were fighting for Uhuru so that they are free and acquire their land back, as shown on page 9. Now, the colonial masters were very brutal, as checked on page 11. The, we see the heavy armed colonial forces arriving in their starched khaki uniforms and green sweaters. They sweep the villages, and what they do is they carry all these men, okay? While others were distracting them, ducking past mud houses, leaping over, those who were found were actually chained and led away to a village, and that is where they were shot. According to Baba Munge, the father was captured and he was actually put under the Mugumo tree where he took a bullet in the leg and fell without a sound in a trench. And remember, he was with crutches. Something that actually we are currently seeing a little bit in the present situation, and we wonder what we are up to. And we also realize the brutality of the white man because of what Muzee Njuguna experiences on page 10. He went to fight for the British in Asia, and when he lost his leg in the landmine in Burma, they released him or discharged him from the King's African Rifle in 1941. His letter just stated that he was unfit for the military service, and they don't send him any compensation, whatever. So he lives a life that is desperate. He comes back to Shambaini village and, you know, he's a crippled and broken man. Now, when you look at the bitterness that runs down his family, it's because of what the British people did to him. So, we also see that the same group now cause a lot of mayhem to Kenya later on. And when they are fighting, what they are doing, I think you've seen it. Now we have also the theme of hopelessness or desperation, disillusionment that is shown because now after fighting in the Mau Mau war as Mau Mau generals, all that Baba Munge sees is failure because now they had fought in the forest, living like wild animals, surrounded by Mount Kenya and Aberdare ranges. It had been quite cold. He had dared it because he knew he was going to save his country. Freedom had come. However, after that, the compensation they were promised, the rewards they were promised were all false. He was taunted as a poor and lowly living man. Uhuru had come, but nothing to show of it. So he was a poor man because of having wasted all his time gone to the bush and come up with nothing. So he's disillusioned. That's why he's drinking so much to a stupor. He comes back home, he wants to forget his problems, but he'll still have the problems. Looking at page 11, we see him talking and asking, page 11, we are the fools who never learn. We threw the white man out then. We waited for our land to be returned to us. But now, who is going to throw the black monkey off our backs? So, which means there is also some sort of neo-colonialism, whereby the blacks now take over power and they decide not to compensate those who fought for war. They decide to betray them. They decide to actually ignore them. There is also the theme of betrayal. Betrayal has been shown in different ways. The first betrayal is that Baba Munge went to fight the British people knowing that freedom fighters will lead to freedom and they'll be compensated. However, that became a false promise as shown on page 9. After years of fighting, he was almost 60, nothing had come by. We see another betrayal that happens when Baba Munge is drinking to a stupor and he had promised the wife a very good, luxurious life. She's actually struggling. She can't even feed the pigs, she can't feed the cows, she can't do much on the farm. And the husband says he doesn't care, even if the animals die, they are not better than human beings. We are also seeing another betrayal that happens with Muzenjuguna. Muzenjuguna sacrifices to join King's African Reform in 1941, when he loses his leg in landmine in Burma, he's discharged. His letter just indicates he's unfit for military service. Then he's sent home without compensation. Even though he looked like a hero in his town, Thika town, he becomes a crippled and broken man, an ex-serviceman who did not have any compensation. Now, we have also another betrayal that happens here with Baba Munge seeing how they shot. You know, the British people shot the father in the nape and crutches just because they were sympathizers to the freedom fighters. Now, we see a father-child relationship that is broken on page 11 and 12. Both Shege and Lucy did not really like the stories of war. Every time the father talked about them, they felt like it was unnecessary. Shege glared at the father all the time when he switched to sarcasm, and he regretted to ever come back here. He felt like he should stay in Nairobi forever, you know. At the same time, that poor father-child relationship is shown on page 9. Lucy and Shege exchange glances when the father is muttering and wiping his face with his sleeves, saying he should be left alone when the mother is complaining about the state of affairs in the farm. Violence, we can talk of violence because we are seeing a lot of violence conducted by the white man, the colonial armed forces who shoot the sympathizers of freedom fighters. That is quite inhumane, right? We can see some change. Shege is no longer a child. He's living in Nairobi and he just comes back home once in a while. We also realize Lucy is you know, a big girl, and the father sees that even at her age, now people are looking at her as a potential wife. I think that is on page 11, right? I don't know whether it's page 11 or somewhere. Okay. Now we can get to stylistic devices, my people, and finish. Okay. It's not an easy thing. So when we come back to stylistic devices, what we have is as follows, chapter 3. Okay. The first style that I saw is vivid description. Like we can actually visualize how Baba Munge is quite drunk, staggering, muttering to himself, almost vomiting, falling off. The dog comes and licks his face on page 8, okay? We can also visualize very clearly page 9, how Mama Munge is actually struggling with the jiko, preparing the goat soup and also preparing the sukuma wiki for the family, while the man is sitting in the chair and muttering, wiping his face and sleeves. And Lucy and Chege are exchanging glances, amazed at the indirect address of the parents. We also see more details on page 10. Mama Munge shrugs with well-rehearsed sense of resignation, measures maize flour for ugali. Baba Munge looks at the embers of the wife's charcoal jiko and sees the fires that raised the hearts to the ground as the colonial officers and African home guards searched for Mau sympathizers. Also, that is violence right there. So that is vivid description. We also see another vivid description on page 11. When the heavy armed colonial forces in their starched khaki uniform and green sweaters sweep into the village amidst a cloud of dust, like the devil's whirlwind in the dry season. They, young men, old, young and old men, took to their heels, throw rocks to the approaching soldiers to distract them. They duck past mud huts. They leap over fences. They run towards the safety of the forest. Okay? And then later, Baba Munge follows them, sees the captured men while watching on the Mugumo tree. He sees how the father takes a bullet in the nape and falls without a sound into the trench. There is also his wooden crutches that fall after that. Wanjuguna stuffs a fist into his mouth to muffle a scream. Then the other part of vivid description, was it there? No. That is vivid description. Now let's get to dialogues. Dialogues, page 11. There is a dialogue between Anjuguna and the son. Yeah? The son says, Father, we can't leave you. Let us carry you. Njuguna says, Will you carry me up to the tree? My son, the ox which has grown old has no admirer. Let the white man escort me to my ancestors if it pleases him. The other dialogue comes on page 9. Though they are indirectly addressing each other, we can see that they are talking to one another indirectly. So we can, at the same time, you can consider it a direct address to some point as dialogue. Page 9. Jesus, bless us. I've never understood the need for this snuff that makes people sneeze like they are being slaughtered, or this drink for that matter. Why do people like wasting time and money like this? Yet we suffer with the little money the farm brings. To think how tired earth releases the crops like they are being wrenched from its uterus, like babies who change their mind halfway through the birth, and the cow whose udder has run dry. Baba Munge says, Can't she leave me a man alone, eh? Then Mama Munge says, What are these things? I ask you, my children, drinking all day, long while the pigs go unfed, the weeding remains undone. Baba Munge says, Why can't they leave me alone, eh? Does anybody here know how I suffered fighting for these countries and all that, okay? So that is uh, dialogue. But you can as well consider it direct address because they are just not exchanging directly, they are talking indirectly. Then we have page 10, direct address, where we have Mzee Njuguna saying, the white man, haha, he wants you to think he's God. But I've seen him weeping like a baby, begging for mercy when looking for a bayonet. When looking a bayonet in the eye, I tell you. Another direct address, run, hide, go on, they are coming. Then that is direct address. There is irony, a lot of irony in this part of the chapter. The first irony is that Baba Munge now is staggering to the compound all the time, cursing and vomiting all along. Yet he lives with fear and suspicion. Because if you are afraid and you have suspicion, you should always be sober. So it is very ironical. The other irony is that Baba Munge thinks someone will pickpocket him, yet his pocket is empty. The wallet is empty. The third irony is that Baba Munge had spent all his time in the cold of the forests when he was as young as 30, fighting for freedom with the hope that he will come back and be rewarded. He will have a big farm where he will live a very good life in Shamba Inn with the wife. Yet when he comes out from war, they don't even consider him. He is left as he is, no reward, no recognition, no whatever. His heroism is just lost in the skies. It's also ironical that Baba Munge keeps sniffing something that makes people, um, sneeze. And Mama Munge finds it very ironical that people can keep doing that. Mama Munge also finds it ironical that people can spend the little money they earn to drink and sniff, when in reality they should spare that money and use it better. The other irony we see here is that Baba Munge wants the pigs to die and everything because he says he watched people die. So what if the animals die? Yet that is the only thing he's relying on. The government has not compensated him. He doesn't have anything. He's a poor man. Now the other irony on page 10, Mzenjuguna went to war, joining King's African Rifles, and when he lost his leg because of that fight in the landmine in Burma, the British people just discharge him without any compensation and consider him unfit for military service. He comes back a broken, crippled man. So it's very ironical. It's also ironical that these British people, they have already made him, you know, a crippled man. Yet when they come and they are killing sympathizers, they easily find happiness in shooting Baba Munge, not Baba Munge Njuguna. The other irony is in the expectation that Baba Munge has that even after he lost in war, that he should still have his sons fighting for something, which doesn't make sense at all. Now we have some sort of sarcasm, especially in the speech by Baba Munge. If you read these words, we are the fools who never learn. We threw the white man out then, we waited for our land to be returned to us. But now, who is going to throw the black monkey off our backs? I, the son, my father hunted down the Japani and Jeremani in Egypt and Burma. I, the son of Njuguna, took my fight to the forest. Where are the cubs who will inherit? So it's like he still feels his children should be like him, and yet he's not gained anything. So that's ironical. So that's irony. I saw a lot of similes, by the way. This writer, Kamoche, is good in the use of similes. So the first simile that I saw was on page 8. Page 8, I saw a simile. Page 8, paragraph, the third last paragraph. He was no longer the 30-year-old who had joined the freedom fighters, living like a wild animal in the forest surrounding Mount Kenya and Aberdares ranges. The second simile is here. He wore an extra jacket to ward off the July cold that had descended on the village like a fog. Okay, that is the second. We want to see the third and the fourth and whatever. Of course, there are so many. When we get to page 9, I think I saw another simile there. But it was like an evil wind blowing false promises as if to taunt the poor and lowly. That is paragraph 3 of page 9. Paragraph 3, page 9. Page 9 again, third last paragraph. Mama Munge says, the snuff that makes people sneeze like they are being slaughtered. That is, and another one, to think how tired earth releases crops like they are being wrenched from its uterus, like babies who change their mind halfway through the birth. So that is almost the sixth simile. Another simile on page 10 that I saw. I saw another one here. Um, he recalled the violence of the ruddy-faced constables who looked like they had been taken right from their mothers' laps and thrown into the inhumanity of war. Another simile, the bitterness had spread like cancer in his heart. Another simile, the betrayal like a cherished memento. He had treated his suffering and betrayal like a cherished memento or a piece of privileged military intelligence to be recounted to astonished visitors who came to hear about his exploits. So that is almost the ninth simile. Another one, the 10th simile on page 10. He wants you to think he's God, but I have seen him weeping like a baby. Weeping like a baby. Page 11, I saw another simile there, and here it was. Hey, come on. Paragraph, the fourth paragraph, fourth last. We are going to live like slaves in our own country. Then the other one was a metaphor. Yeah, so now let's get to metaphors. The metaphor, page 11, we have, who is going to throw the black monkey, referring to the Africans who had now taken over leadership. Then another metaphor, where are the cubs? So he's referring to his children who will inherit the sport of the leopard fathers. So will take over the courage of their parents. Okay, so that is a metaphor, metaphoric. Another simile, perched precariously like cowardly raven. Hey, yeah, we have so many similes. On page 11 again, there is a metaphor there when Juguna refers to himself as an ox that is grown old. Then when we look at page, I saw something somewhere as a metaphor. Metaphor, freight and dog. That one is, I think those are the metaphors that I've met. We have ellipsis, page 9. Yeah, Mama Munge speaks and says, what are these things? I ask you, my children. Drinking all day like long while the pigs go unfed. The weeding remains undone. And she stops speaking on page 9. We have local dialect, words like Uhuru, Muratina, Mugumo, Jiko, Ugali. We have rhetorical questions. Rhetorical questions. Page 9, we have questions such as, can she leave a man alone? Mama Munge asks, what are these things? I asked you, my children. Then she also asks, why do people like wasting money and time like this? She also, there is also another question on top, page 9. How could it be otherwise? Then page 10, I saw some rhetorical questions. Let me see. When Mama Munge is speaking, is it Mama Munge? Baba Munge. He asks, why can't they leave me alone? Does anybody here know how I suffered fighting for this country's independence for Uhuru? Do I have time to listen to stories about pigs? What is a pig's life? On page 11, we have another rhetorical question. Will you carry me up a tree? Another one by Baba Munge, page 11. But now, who is going to throw the black monkey off our backs? My father hunted down the Japani and Jeremy. Where are the cubs who will inherit the spots of their leopards' fathers? Local dialect, Sukuma Wiki, Era. Then there is simile here. Your grandfather was cut down like a dog. There is, I think I saw some onomatopoeia. Martyred, page 11. Martyred, page 11. There was something on page 8. Scampered. Can we consider scampered as onomatopoeia? Please help me determine that. Page 9, I thought I saw some other onomatopoeic word. Tremble, sneeze. Yeah. We have another scream. There was scream on page 11. Onomatopoeia 11. Yeah. Then we have the use of saying. Saying. The ox which has grown old has no admirer. That's a wise saying. And cubs inherit the spots of their leopard fathers. It's also a saying, I believe. Shrugged on page 10 is onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia. Do we have a style that I've left really? Maybe contrast. Shege and Baba Munge are contrasts. For him, he hates stories about fights, betrayal. um, heroism. What he's focused about is a humble life, peaceful one, taking to his job and enhancing development in the rural districts. He has opted to go live in the city. He's living at Umoja, the sprawling low-rise estate in Eastlands. He doesn't care much about the talks his father holds onto. So bye bye guys. Thank you so much. This is one of the longest parts. In fact, I'm going to post it as two. One part will be the reading and the other part will be this other part. I hope you'll follow. Bye bye and have a nice time.